Welcome to the Granary and this interview with Paul and Elaine Harper. I had a great privilege of being under Paul's ministry as a child all the way through into my early teens, and it was a great blessing to hear him preach, to hear him expound the word of the Lord. It was also a great privilege to know Elaine as well, and her life just presented and demonstrated how a godly woman should live. And often people say as well that without Elaine there would be no Paul. The two worked hand in hand for the glory of God. It was so evident to see in their lives. We hope this interview will be of great help for you in your spiritual journey. Maybe you're a young man who's looking to go into the ministry. Maybe you're looking to figure out how to live in the world that we live in our current contemporary world. We hope that this interview will help in that, help with understanding the importance of prayer, help us understand what it means to live out the glory of God in our lives. So we really hope and we pray that this interview will be a great benefit to you for your spiritual journey and will be a blessing to you.
Well, welcome everyone. Thanks very much for joining us. So we're just going to hear from two lovely people, Paul and Elaine. Paul and Elaine Harper were serving in the Granary Evangelical Church. Paul was the pastor there for many years, but we just want to hear a little bit about them, hear a bit about their acting careers beforehand, how they became Christians, how they then sought to serve the Lord. So we've just got some questions to ask you both, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So great. So we thought we'd start with just kind of the basics. You know, where did you both grow up? Where are you both from? What can you tell us about your early lives? And maybe how did you end up meeting each other?
Yeah. Well, we grew up about 250 miles apart, really, because Elaine grew up in South Wales and I grew up in Kent. Kent is my home county, and nearer London, but at a time when London didn't encroach. A place called Belvedere, which is known for its marshes, and I used to love walking on the marshes, actually, and gathering frogs and
Oh, wow.
Anyway, in school you
yes,
had your leads, didn't you? The Gilbert and Sullivan.
Oh, yes.
So this was how you started to get into acting?
Yes, when I was at school, really.
Right.
There was a local amateur dramatic society that I joined, and I was there really until I went to college. But at school, we did Gilbert and Sullivan. We graduated at Gilbert and Sullivan, and we did a lot of Gilbert and Sullivan, which I also enjoyed very much. I remember us doing the Pirates of Penzance. We did HMS Pinafore, and we had great fun. I enjoyed doing that. And we had a very enthusiastic director who was the teacher of religious instruction, which was interesting. I never had any interest whatsoever then in the gospel, but I did go along to regularly. In fact, I was in the choir of the local Anglican church, and he was a teacher in the school and went to another Anglican church quite close by, and we sort of we got on with each other very well. And he was a very great enthusiast. He used to skip along. I don't know if he's still alive nowadays, but he used to skip along, and he would direct form and direct a new amateur dramatic society in the school. The school had its first, I don't think it had ever known anything like that before, its first adventure onto the stage. And so I was roped in. In fact, I found myself being put in leading parts in the plays that we did. And I didn't really know Elaine until I went to college. So we met in college, and I formed an attachment with Elaine in college. And I used to go to her home in Wales sometimes, and she would come to mine in Kent, and got on very well with my father particularly. My father was a humorous chap, and he used to enjoy Elaine's company, and we enjoyed.
You enjoyed sport, didn't you?
Yes, she has to prompt me because I'm getting gaga. Yes, I used to love sport when I was at school. I played cricket, which was my favourite sport, and I played soccer. I played both for the school team, and we used to really have great fun. We were quite successful, actually. And what else? Well,
you did the Midsummer Night's Dream. That was your first amateur.
Yeah, now that was with the local theatre company. The Gilbert and Sullivans were the school. Midsummer Night's Dream was the local theatre company.
Right, so was this after you'd gone to college? Or?
No, it wasn't actually.
Right, okay.
It was while I was still in college. And just getting to know Elaine. Well, we were thrown very much together in college, and we enjoyed each other's company, and we formed an attachment even then. I always enjoyed going to her home. Her father was the editor of the local and owner too of the local newspaper, and I used to find it amusing that he would ask you when you first arrived, "Oh, hello, Paul. How are you? How long are you staying?" And about 10 minutes later, "Hello, Paul. How long are you staying?" He'd forgotten he'd asked it in the first place.
So presumably this is in Wales then. So whereabouts in Wales, Elaine, did you grow up? Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about your early life.
Absolutely.
Yes, well, I was born in a place called Llanelli, and
unpronounceable to many Englishmen.
right. I can just remember Swansea being bombed, and I was staying with my mother and a grandmother, and our back bedroom looked towards the Gower Peninsula, and the sky was red at night. That's what I remember most about the war. And going to the cinema with my mother, and then coming home with a little torch because there were no street lights and the blackout, and having to hide when the siren went off underneath an iron table. And I can remember my aunt was also staying in the same house, and she caught the sort of quilt, which was the equivalent of a duvet. And as she was coming down, she caught hold of a Chinese vase, and in the duvet, and it came bonk, bonk, bonk down the stairs. And of course, we thought it was a bomb.
Wow.
But the Lord was very good to us, during the war. And really, when I was about 9 years old, my parents, we drove to Stratford upon Avon, and I saw A Midsummer Night's Dream for the first time. And I thought, oh, I'd love to be able to do this. And later, when I was about 15, 16, we had our first television, And of course, I loved the dramas on it. And yes, when it came to university, I was accepted for Cardiff University, but I decided I wanted to go to Cardiff Castle of Music and Drama instead. And they accepted me without an audition. And when I got in there, I thought, I don't know how to act. I'd wanted to act, and for A-level English, I used to learn the speeches from Shakespeare and used to quote them. And that was most of my replies for the long speeches of Shakespeare. However, I then got a book on drama from the library in Cardiff, and that was Stanislavski. And I stayed in Cardiff for 2 years, but at the end of 2 years, I felt if I'm going to make a career of the theatre, then I need to study more. And so I applied to the Central School of Music and Drama and was accepted. Speech and drama. And yes, while I was in Cardiff, I played a Mother Superior in a play called The Carmelites. And one of the directors, he said I had tattered speech, which I didn't understand. What it meant was that I couldn't hit a note clearly, that I would wobble around it higher or lower. And he sent me up to a voice teacher in London to see if they could help me with this. And eventually, yeah, I got it. I could hit notes dead center. But it took a while. And yes, of course, then going to the Central School of Speech and Drama, Paul was the same year. And I didn't like him.
Oh dear.
The first meeting, he was so arrogant. And yeah, he was yeah, so very selfish. And but
she was a good judge of character.
But eventually, you know, could see his acting ability, and the tutors there could. And so I appreciated him more. And then we did seem to like the same sort of things. So that really was probably our first meeting. I don't know. Do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you expressed yourself very well, very honestly.
So was it at this point that you had an encounter with the gospel? Or, you know, so how did that come about? You know, who was converted first?
Elaine was converted first.
I was converted
probably
first.
4 years ahead of me.
Right.
Yes.
Well, I should say too that at the end of our first year, we had a split amongst the staff and students at the Central School of Speech and Drama. And
the first major student rebellion.
Oh, wow.
And yes, some students felt that the exercises that we were doing were ruining their voices. But we felt, like Paul and myself and some others, felt that the movement classes that we had freed our voices.
Yes.
And so there was a split, and a group of staff and a group of students formed themselves into the Drama Centre of London, and starting from scratch, really, we used to meet in church halls and then performed like at the Dolmar rehearsal centres and places like that in London.
It was called the Drama Centre London. And we found that the students that went with us and the tutors, they were very gifted men, actually. One of them was, well, they were both attached to the Royal Shakespeare Company. I think that was right. National Theatre, and the Royal Shakespeare Company. They're two different units, but we found ourselves really in a very good place in terms of training with this new school. Can you add anything?
Well, it was a very broad training. We would have movement lessons, theory of movement, voice production, singing. Fencing I had done in Cardiff, and we had the Welsh champion fencer to teach us, which was great. And yes, I was the only one of the girls to stay the whole course. And
all the rest died.
You used to,
I'm joking.
I used to fence with the men as well, and I really enjoyed.
Did the two of you ever have a fencing battle?
Well, Paul has a story of in his professional capacity on television, don't you?
Yes.
I was Romeo and Juliet.
Yes, I was in a fencing bout. I fought Romeo, but Romeo was somewhat uncoordinated, and the way I was to die was that he was to whip his blade against my neck and then pull it out gradually. Unfortunately, he was an emotional chap, and he got carried away. And instead of pulling it out gradually, he whipped it out, and I felt blood rolling down my neck, and I thought, "Uh-oh, that doesn't feel good."
Wasn't it being filmed?
Yes, it was. I couldn't stop because it was being filmed, you see. And in those days, it was money, so you carried on. And I accordingly died. And once the director shouted "cut," I was up off the ground and straight to the first aid.
Yeah.
But happily it was just superficial.
But didn't you have to go to hospital?
I did, yes. I think, yes.
In your full.
Oh yes, I went in full tights, and the hospital, they must have thought, we've got a crazy one here. Anyway, it wasn't anything but a flesh wound, really. Not in a nice place, but there we are. That was it, and the Lord spared me.
Was it at this point that you had an encounter with the gospel, or how did you first hear about the gospel? How did you first hear about Christianity, and had you had encounters with Christianity before this point? Or
well, I was brought up in nominal Christianity. The Church of England that I was brought up in was full of nice people, but spiritually dead. So I never heard the gospel. And once I got into college life, I really wasn't interested in the church life anymore. And Elaine and I formed a liaison, and we, to put it in plain terms, we had an affair, and we were an item, as it were. And I wasn't at all interested in the gospel then, but there came a point when she had expected me to marry her and I didn't. And she threw herself instead into the arms of the Lord. And that's her part of the story. That's how she came to know the Lord Jesus as Saviour. She'd only known him nominally too, up to that point. You want to carry on?
Yes, well, I stayed in the theatre for 2 years. I did 2 tours with children's theatre, and I did a season in rep in Leicester at the Phoenix Theatre. And I didn't like theatre life. After coming back from Leicester, I felt a conviction upon my spirit, really. And I, looking back, I know I wanted peace with God. And I started going to various churches in London. I went to Westminster Abbey one Sunday and got nothing. And I went to St. Paul's Cathedral and got nothing. Then I went to the local Anglican church and I got nothing there, but they gave me their magazine, and at the back of it was an advert for the Baptist Missionary Society in London. So I had been in a Baptist, an English Baptist church, which was liberal, in my hometown of Ammanford.
And English speaking.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that's right, because there are Welsh-speaking Baptists and English-speaking Baptists. And so I thought, I'll go to the Baptist Missionary Society in London and ask them. Well, I didn't know what to do, really, because Paul had said he didn't want to marry me, and I felt my world was caving in. And I think I wanted to maybe become a missionary to get away from him. And so I went to the Baptist Missionary Society, and she said something like, oh, you got A-level French, and you probably need to go to somewhere like London Bible College to get some, I suppose, diploma in religious knowledge, yes. And she said, yes, with your French, you could go to somewhere like the Congo. And so she put me in touch into the Baptist church in Abbey Road, which was opposite where the Beatles were, though I never saw them. And yes, they had a good pastor there, and he put me to work straight away, teaching in the missionary school that was attached to the Baptist church. And after a while, he had a call to a church in America, and his daughter, who worked in a Lutheran bookshop in the Edgware Road in London, asked me if I would take her job on. So I did, and I was reading the Lutheran books, and it was talking about purgatory, and I thought, is there purgatory or isn't there? I mean, I hadn't really considered it because, well, I had some knowledge from, you know, that Welsh Calvinistic church that my parents used to go to. And, you know, we were never taught about purgatory. And then I got a job at Scripture Union, selling the books there. And we were allowed to buy the books at a third off, which was good. So started building up a library. And after, oh yes, and then the bookshop closed down. So I had to look for another job. And so I was a children's nurse in a day nursery in the Maida Vale, and loved looking after the children. But it was exhausting work. Used to come home sleep for an hour and then make my evening meal. And then that job finished and I got a job at Scripture Union. And then somebody said, you ought to go to Westminster Chapel and hear the minister there. He speaks for about an hour on part of a verse in the Bible. And Paul heard that. He was around. He'd come back from, I don't know, Pitlochry or somewhere. And he said, for somebody who can speak for an hour on part of a verse in the Bible, a boring book like the Bible must be heard. So we both went to hear Dr. Lloyd Jones on a Sunday morning. And after I'd heard him, I said to Paul, I don't know about you, but I'm coming back here this evening. And I thought, this man knows what he's talking about. And so I left the Baptist church and went to Westminster, and every Friday night I used to catch the number 2 bus from Scripture Union down to Victoria, and I heard the last 5 months of the doctor's ministry when he was preaching on Romans, and well, that was fantastic. And yes, then occasionally Paul would come down, and there was another actor that came with him, Chris Crooks, remember?
Yes,
used
I do.
to come. And then Paul would go away again. And I think when you were in Pitlochry, you took all the works of Bunyan up there to Scotland, and you read all the books you'd taken of Bunyan,
I took
didn't
Bunyan
you?
with me.
And
have no better travel companion than John Bunyan.
That's right. So you know, I'm sure the Lord was working in conviction of sin in you at that point.
Yeah.
And I guess you ought to take over then, because it comes to your boys in the band.
Yes, I was fighting really, because I was hearing the gospel on the Sunday and behaving as I usually did, like a devil, in the week. And the two didn't go together. And I was convicted. And the more I heard the doctor, the more convicted I got. And then the same, I was fighting, you know, it was an inner fight. And then I had a year, well, it was almost a year, at Pitlochry, which is about the furthest you could be removed from London as possible, being right up in the Highlands, in the middle of the Highlands, really. And while I was there, I was reading John Bunyan. And there was no, didn't go to a church there at all. At least I can't remember going to a church. No church made any impression on me. And well, when I came back after a year, they used to say to me, when I said I was going to be an actor, sorry, this may sound dislocated, but they used to say, you shouldn't be an actor, you'll always be out of work. I was never out of work. I seemed to get one job after another. I had a good agent. Not many actors had agents, but I had an agent, and he was a very good one. And he always had me in work. And so I went on from strength to strength, as it were, in the theatre, which only intensified the struggle inside, because I was hearing the gospel on the one hand and enjoying the theatre on the other. But as time went on, I enjoyed the theatre less. I don't know that I could say I enjoyed the gospel more. I don't know that I could say I enjoyed the gospel, but the gospel gripped me. Because after the doctor retired and another man came along, and I didn't find any man as good as the doctor. And so it was a battle. But, well, how to cut in.
The boys in the band.
Yes, that's right. All actors look for what they call the actor's big break. That is that one part that will launch them into the big time. And I was offered one of the leading parts in a play called The Boys in the Band. And it was a notorious play at the time. It was immensely successful in the West End. And I was in what would be called the follow-up cast, so that when one cast was done, they changed the actors, and I was one of the changelings. And was successful in it, had good reviews, etc. But I wasn't at all happy. All an actor wants is success, really. And I got success and I wasn't happy with it. It was really because of the gospel. I was convicted. And I carried on listening to the people that followed the doctor. They were faithful men. And funnily enough, the one that followed was another Welshman. Anyway.
But you knew you shouldn't take the role.
Yes, that's right. I knew I shouldn't take this part. I was convicted about it to the degree where I knew I shouldn't take it, but I took it because it was the big break. That was the point I needed to make. I hope I haven't fractured the testimony by jumping in there. But Elaine and I still saw each other, and she continued going to Westminster Chapel, and I continued to go with her, and got more and more convicted as time went on. And, well, it's a long time since I gave my testimony. I have to remember what follows. Nothing was really very important then but the gospel. And so Elaine and I carried on hearing the gospel. And Elaine, of course, was truly a Christian. She was converted, but I wasn't. And went on listening to the gospel. And then it came to a Sunday morning in January 1970, I think it was.
When?
Was it 1971? Anyway, it was thereabouts. And just a phrase that he used spoke to me. Clear-knowing, yes. And I was converted. And after that, you know, I really didn't want to be in the theatre anymore. And I got myself out of the theatre, and all the friends around me said, "You're a fool. Why leave the theatre when you're just coming into the big time?" And I said I wasn't happy anymore in the theatre, and I wanted to hear the gospel. And so I detached myself. I proposed to Elaine, and amazingly she accepted me. And I left the theatre and started hearing the gospel every morning and evening on a Sunday. And it was good. It was very good. Now then, what happened then?
Well, yeah, you went into Bible college.
That's right. The interesting thing is, I felt a call to preach before I was converted. That may sound amazing. It just happens to be a fact. I was sitting in Westminster Chapel one Sunday morning, and it was as though a voice spoke to me saying, "This is what I want you to do." And I couldn't resist that voice. And so I looked for a Bible school, and there was a very good one then. It doesn't exist anymore now. It went out of being, but
it was the forerunner of the
it was
seminary.
The forerunner of the London seminary. Yes, seminary. Oh, Yeah, little things that shape you. Anyway, so I went into Bible school. And dear me, I must be getting old. Did I propose? I proposed first, didn't I?
Oh,
And we
yes.
were married first.
Yes.
That's right.
Mhm.
And I carried on going to Bible school, and Elaine worked to support me. And I enjoyed the training very much.
Had some good tutors.
Good tutors, yes. They were pastors in churches. One of them was Andrew Davis, who was really quite well known in evangelical circles. John Marshall was another one.
Omri Jenkins.
Omri Jenkins, yes. Omri Jenkins, though he wasn't a tutor, he was the principal of the Bible school. And yes, I carried on, and I went through the course of training, and I was then called to assist Pastor Harry Waite at Thornton Heath Evangelical Church, and accepted it. And so I went to assist him, and I was there for nearly 3 years, yes. And that was interesting. It was a total change, really. And there were good people there, and Harry Waite was a good pastor. And Elaine and I had our early married life there. I suppose it might be time to say that we had what the people would call a tragedy in our lives, in that our first little boy was born a handicapped child. He had Down syndrome, and we had him until he was 2 years, 2 months. And we were in the car driving back home one day, and he started crying and then yelling and screaming, and he keeled over, and he died. It was just like that. It was one thing happening immediately after another. And so we lost our firstborn. And he was a sweet little boy. His name was Jeremy. We used to call him Jeremy the Prophet. Sorry, that was my sense of humor. I called him Jeremy the Prophet. Anyway, yes. What happened then? I then had a call to a church. Where was that? That was South Wales, wasn't it?
Yes, it was in Maesteg.
In Maesteg. Yes, and I accepted that. I'd actually had a call before, but didn't feel happy about that, didn't feel it was God's will. But when the Maesteg call came, Harry Waite actually said to me, "You can't be staying out of the ministry, you're called to it." And doubtful persuasion, but I was persuaded, and I accepted the call and went to Maesteg. And we were there for how long? 3 years?
No, 1 year.
1 year?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Yes. Sorry, this is all distant past now.
That's fine.
I haven't spoken about it for ages. So I enjoyed preaching. I was very much a greenhorn preacher, and I must have made the mistakes that all young preachers make, but carried on. And after 1 year, what happened then? I had a...
You resigned.
I did.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes. Yes. Sorry. I resigned. I was the cause of the problem, really. But
I don't know. I think it probably was me.
I don't know that it was.
Yes,
What
shall I
happened?
tell them the story? What
Okay.
I did? Yes. Well, I guess we were very green going into the ministry in my stag, and one lady said to me, she said, I heard that you visited Mrs. Floyd in hospital. I'll have to get the flu for you to visit me, Mrs. Harper.
What must I do to get a
What
visit from
must I
you?
do to get a visit from you, Mrs. Harper? And I said, oh no, I don't visit for flu. You've got to break at least a leg before I come. So obviously that gave the wrong idea. And anyway, that wasn't the main thing, I'm sure. It was,
No.
they had a really very good man before Paul, and he had brought them out of the Presbyterian denomination. And really, it was very difficult to follow his ministry.
It was a matter of follow that.
And yes, and people, they weren't open spiritually, because Paul would sometimes do a historical paper for them on church history. And one lady, she just, because well, it was a prayer meeting and there would have been prayer, but because of this historical paper, she got up and walked out of the church, and that sort of feeling spread. And well, Harry Waite's wife used to say, you shouldn't stay in your first church for more than a year because you make too many mistakes. Well,
She wasn't wrong.
Anyway,
Case, anyway.
yes, so Paul was out of the ministry for a while, but then a friend of ours had a breakdown, and he was offered a break in New Zealand for 5 months. So Paul looked after his church in Swansea for a while.
6 months.
So we used to go and help there for a while. And then he got a call from the church at Wigmore.
That's right.
And
yes,
I can remember sitting next to Vivian the first time I came to Wigmore, and always remember her shining eyes.
yes.
And we've probably been friends now for about 44 years.
And for the benefit of
That's my
those
mum.
who don't know, that is Michael's mum.
Yeah, that's right. And then, of course, we were in Wigmore for 5 years. And what happened there was that we had been on holiday in Switzerland, and Paul's mum had bursitis, and she wouldn't allow us to get her a wheelchair. So Paul had to carry her everywhere.
I didn't have to, but I did.
And when we returned in our 5th year in Wigmore, Paul felt shattered, and the church then said that he should have a month off. And so we took it, and we went to stay in Scotland, and friends in up in Wick, and we went to stay with John Tallach in Aberdeen. But while we were away, people were getting ready to get rid of us when we came back. So a church meeting was called, and we were asked to leave the church. And I think we were given a month or so in order to leave the manse in Marshall Road, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Marshall Road. And then Paul had an invitation to go to Florida. One of the ladies who came with us, or this was before people left Wigmore to join with us, her father had gone from Rhodesia, as it was at the time, Zimbabwe, and he had to leave for political reasons, and he got to Florida, and I suppose he didn't have a dollar in his pocket.
No, he said he came with a $10 bill or something like that, and that's all he had in his pocket.
Right, and he became a preacher, and he offered Paul to come over for a month, and unbeknown to Paul, Paul thought he was going over there for a rest, but this man had booked him to preach on Wednesdays and Sundays
Each week.
and
Wow.
after
That's some
after
rest.
the month after the month, Paul couldn't get a plane back for another 2 weeks. So it worked out that he was in America for six weeks.
Yeah.
Then when he returned, folk in the church had felt that he'd been wrongly dismissed from Wigmore and got up a petition and tried to have him reinstated again, but the folk weren't happy with him, and so a group asked him to be their pastor, and we
To form a new church.
And we met in homes for several weeks, months, until we got a room down in the community centre.
That was the advent of the Granary.
That was the advent of the Granary, really, yes.
And Vivian was one of the original members.
Yes.
Founded
She
it.
was, yeah.
That was right. Yes, and with your dad and Antonietta.
Yeah.
Then Gary and Gary Myers and Guinevere joined us later.
Yeah.
We had other folk, but they sort of peeled off one by one, really, and then other people joined us, like Steve and Elsie and Eve Meinshagen and Mossy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And the Lewis family, whose house the pastor bought from one of the Sarah Lewis.
And this would be
how
my
many
father,
years ago?
the
Yeah,
current
that's
pastor
right.
of the Granary.
That's right,
Yeah.
yes. And yes, Paul tried various jobs to sort of support himself at the beginning. After he'd come back from Florida, he tried the water board and the tourist industry and various things. But in the end, he had more invitations to return to America. And so our support came mainly from America.
Yeah.
And he could have stayed longer in America, but he decided that he would just go for 7 weeks in the spring and 7 in the autumn.
I actually had a couple of calls from churches in America, but I never felt it was right to accept them, though I wasn't against preaching in America. And it was very clear, the way it worked out, that the Lord supported me through the visits that I made to America in the spring and the fall each year. And that's how it went on for years until I retired. And, it was, I got many happy and good friends in America. Some of them, of course, are still alive. So I carried on doing that the whole of my ministerial life, really, with these visits to the States. Yeah.
And just jumping in there, just
Yeah.
Elaine, how did you cope with Paul being away in America for 14 weeks of the year?
Yeah.
Well, I was kept really very busy in the sense that the boys had to go back to school, so we'd catch the train and walk up from the railway station up to Drury Drive. I think that's where the school was. And then I'd come home and then have to go and meet them again at the end of the day. And yes, I would entertain the preachers that we would have on a Sunday. Yeah, it's just I used to do drawings for Faye so that she could draw something while listening to the word on Sundays. And yeah, I was just kept very, very busy. And yeah, there are always things to take the boys to, like they used to belong to the environmental group. Is it called Kent Watch, I think?
Kent Watch for Nature
Conservation and yeah, various things that they were involved in. And so, yes, the time did pass very quickly because I was kept very busy. And if a minister couldn't come, then I'd have to find another minister and ring round, etc. And we had Win Hughes to preach for us one Sunday in the early days. And he was at the seminary in London at the time, and he went to Essex, the Rainham in Essex, by mistake. He was driven by, I think an Indian friend was bringing him in his car, and they just had time to come over the, I don't know whether it was
River Thames, I suppose.
there or whatever. But he just got here in time to take the service at the Granary. Yes, we had very good preachers. We had Peter Howell from Folkestone on several occasions. And
Bill Calder.
Yes, Bob Sutton and young men from Waterford House and I can't remember. Yes, I think we had John Beale and we had Andrew Saywell from Folkestone as well would come over. So we were supplied with very good men, which was great. So everything was able to carry on, which was great. And then when Paul was thinking of retiring, I don't know if I'm stealing yours.
No, you carry on. You're on a flow.
We heard your dad preach and thought that he would be a good man. And so he was invited to preach, and he accepted a call to the Granary.
Went on from there.
Yes. And he's been with us now, isn't it, 14 years?
I suppose it probably is, 2008. We moved down to Kent. So and I suppose there was a year where you were kind of pastor, and then my dad was assistant, and then he took over in 2009. So
that's right.
14
years.
And that would have been May 2009, I think.
Yes.
That's right.
That's when I came of age.
There's quite a few in your story, quite a few, I guess, ups and downs, isn't there, in your ministry journey, Paul? I mean, I guess a good question to ask really is how did you overcome all those struggles and the challenges that arose in those moments? You know, from changing churches, from the all those kind of things that happened. How did you kind of overcome all of that?
There's only one word I could use,
Mhm.
and that would be grace.
Mhm.
God gave me grace
Mm.
and the sense of his guiding me all the time. Our family life and my own personal life was always bathed in prayer. So we would have a family altar every day. And that is something that I would thoroughly recommend and have recommended to my own sons too, and to people generally. Should be at the very heart of Christian family life. And that's it really.
Oh, I think actually Pastor Danny mentioned it this last Sunday, and that is the call, where when you know that you've been called, then you
Yeah.
always fall back on that call, don't you?
Yeah.
When things are very difficult. And because you know you've been called, then you know that the Lord will carry you through.
Yes.
Isn't that right?
Yes.
Huh.
I wouldn't have been able to continue if I hadn't had the call. The call was there. And when you have the call so strongly, any trial that occurs washes off you. The Lord supports you because you are always directed back to the call. This is what I called you to do, the Lord would say. And so that was really the answer to every problem, where you got to really real trouble. But
just another question as well regarding, I guess, your ministry as well is, I mean, it's something that me and Josh have often talked about in our discussions as individual believers, is that, and I think you mentioned it in a few sermons as well, is that in Reformed churches things can get quite cold and stuffy, and there's emotion kind of goes, rather in the opposite circles there's emotion but there's no kind of, let's say, kind of doctrines as so much. I mean, one thing I think that was always known for your ministry was getting a good balance between the two, and just how can that be achieved, do you think, and how did you achieve that, to get that balance? Or
the answer to that is your own personal life with the Lord, your prayer life. I've always had prayer first. I've never really wanted to go out into a day without spending time with the Lord, and that's what I always have done down through all the years. Spend time with the Lord over the scriptures and in prayer. And that is something that holds you and has held me down all the years. So I could say nothing moves me. I mean, when it comes to trials, tribulations, they don't move me off balance. I'm always kept stable. Yeah.
I guess we can move on to kind of Christian living as well. As kind of touched upon this already, haven't we? I guess in part of, and one of the questions that we had here was, how do you foster a fervent, effectual prayer life? But I think you kind of covered that in part, is that you just dedicate yourself, don't you, to that in the mornings and in the evenings. But I guess, is there anything else you want to add to that? How do you foster that? Because it can be quite difficult, can't it, to pray? It can be quite a challenge to make yourself pray. So how do you overcome that difficult moments, I guess?
Prayer is always, it's the place where Satan attacks the most. If he can divide a Christian from his prayer life, he's won a marvelous, mighty victory. I wouldn't say marvelous, but mighty victory in the Christian's life. That's how many Christians backslide, you know. They are knocked off center by the devil's attacks. I got to thinking the other day, we perhaps don't pay enough attention to the devil. Not that you can always pay too much attention, and there are those that have done that. But we don't give enough attention to watching the devil and his wiles. There used to be Puritans that would preach a whole series of messages on the wiles of the devil. And I understand why they did that. I always made sure that prayer was even, prayer is a difficult thing. Your prayer life is a difficult thing because Satan doesn't want you to pray. And he'll do anything he can to stop you from praying. But you have to resist. Resist the devil and he will flee from you. And that's exactly it. I found that when I resist the devil, I get through rough water into smooth water, and I'm able to pray more easily. But that's really the secret to it. We have to be constant. We have to battle on. One of the major battles in life is the battle of prayer, that we go on doing it. And it remains a battle in the church. We need revival. We need God to come. We should not be content with a mundane, run-of-the-mill, Sunday by Sunday, going through the motions kind of Christianity. But we need to seek him and find him and to do it with all our hearts. And that actually starts with the pastor, I'm sure, and his prayer life, and should spread like a good plague through the whole congregation. That we actually love to pray. Your mother is a great example of that. She's a great prayer warrior, in my experience of her. Yes.
Yeah, always been a great example to me as well. Seeing someone pray as much as she does. It's people in your life who show good examples to you. I guess another question we could ask is, who have been your greatest spiritual influences, past and present? Who do you think, in history or even recent times, who was the kind of figures that impacted you the most, do you think, as a believer?
That bears a little thought. Of course, one person immediately springs to mind, and that's the doctor. I was one of those blessed to be alive at the end of the doctor's ministry, and heard him to the end of his life, really. And he was a great expounder of the truth, but he wasn't a dry expounder of the truth. He was a deep and powerful expounder of the truth, and I used to love to hear him. I can't say I've heard anyone since like the doctor. He was a phenomenon, without any doubt.
Shall I interrupt here? And when we were in my stag, Paul would get up at 4 o'clock on a Monday morning to join other ministers who shared cars to drive up to London to the ministers' fraternal that the doctor held.
Yeah.
Was it once every month?
Yes.
Because they were so blessed by his wisdom.
Yes.
And I used to say when Paul returned, what did he say? What did he say? He was blessed really by the Lord in an amazing way.
Yes.
He really was.
Yes. I mean, I think you've got to be very careful with men, particularly with great men. We mustn't be men followers in too extreme a fashion. We must learn from great men and follow their teaching where it's faithful to the scripture, but not be men followers. And that's something that I suppose, would come from the doctor's ministry. That he was self-effacing. He was a very humble man. And very learned in the scripture.
And he had a wide capacity. He was always reading, and his knowledge was vast.
Yes.
And on many subjects. It was always. You're encouraged, aren't you, to walk with the wise so that you can be wiser.
I have just on reading in particular, I have a question for both of you, perhaps maybe one each. If you could pick one book that, aside from the Bible, of course, one book that impacted your lives? Is there one single book you could pick out and say, this has impacted my life as a believer more than any other?
You want to go first?
Put you on the spot now.
Yes, yes. Well, yes, I have been blessed by the biography of the Doctor, the 2 volumes. I have been blessed by that, but I think also Thomas Watson's books. Really, I loved his expressions and things like his delicateness. We talked about like the blush on a rose, and to illustrate various virtues, and probably Thomas Watson, I would think.
I wouldn't differ from that, actually. I think Thomas Watson was remains a great influence.
Mm-hmm.
He's one I loved. He's my favorite Puritan, actually. It always annoys me when people talk about us being puritanical. Yes, let's be puritanical in the good sense. Doesn't mean self-righteous. It doesn't mean self-righteous at all.
And then, sorry.
No, you carry on.
Another book would be the Whitfield volume. Forgotten the author. Pollock?
Is it the Arnold Dallimore?
Dallimore.
Biography.
That one.
Yeah.
Yes. That was.
So Pollock also did write.
Did he? Okay. Yeah. It was a particularly good books.
Yes. Dallimore is a marvelous writer.
Yeah. But then
a good biographer.
There's so many. I mean, there's Spurgeon. Go on and on.
Yeah.
So one more question while we're kind of considering your lives as Christians. You two together, you're such a lovely couple, and I've got so many fond memories of the two of you together. What would you say has been your secret to a long, happy marriage together? What has been your secret sauce?
It sounds sort of, you would expect me to say this, but I would say it anyway because it's true. It's of course the Lord. The fact that I came to know the Lord through someone hounding me. She hounded me. She pursued me. And I'm glad she did. She needed to. She knew what she was doing. And she was full of zeal for the Lord too. So I'm nothing without my wife. My wife is everything. And that's why we've been so happy together for so long. We've loved our holidays because our holidays have been times when we could go. We usually like to go to the Highlands of Scotland. That's where we have gone. We haven't been now for quite a number of years, but when I was in the ministry, we used to take our holidays in the Highlands. And we had a great friend there, John Tallach, who's still alive and still ministering, but not pastoring. And John is a good preacher. He's a very Scottish preacher, but he's a good preacher. And Isabel, his wife, who's a dear, sweet girl. So we still have them. We still write to them occasionally, and it's about time I wrote them a letter, actually. Well, John has been a great influence too. I've loved his preaching. He's an unusual preacher, really. And I like unusual preachers.
Yes, they're themselves. They are themselves.
Yes, they're themselves. I don't like a reformed preacher who follows rote, who follows the usual way of doing things. And when you've heard one, you've heard them all, really. But no, I don't like that kind of reformed preacher. I like a man who is his own man, and a good Christian man who follows the Lord. And you don't find emphasis on any particular preacher. I don't believe in following men to follow the Lord. The Lord would be grieved if we followed men, even good men. You know, he wants us to follow him, which is what we strive to do. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions?
Oh, well, and also because I suppose we have a similar background, and so we still appreciate good theatre, especially the classical theatre, I would say. And because we discovered, and we should have made a note of it, that Shakespeare used to attend a Puritan preacher in London, and we should have made a note of that. Paul read it out to me one day, and we just passed it over. But, you know, Shakespeare's got about 7,000 quotes, which are biblical.
Yeah.
And this is incredible. And do you think people say, oh, you know, I don't like the Puritans, etc. But if they like Shakespeare, then they like the Puritans. Oh, it's crazy, really. They don't know. Well, yeah, they just don't know. But no, we have so much in common with our background in the theatre, and loving good theatre, and yeah, we generally like the same things, and I suppose having been brought up in the same sort of stable, and really having been blessed, I feel so much by the Lord, and probably feel that we're more like decadent Harpers, really.
I don't like the word reformed, though I understand why people use it. I don't like it. I prefer to say that we are gospel believing. We love the gospel. And
I heard a minister's definition of being reformed, because somebody asked him what was reformed, and he said, well, it's people who read the Bible, who think biblically, so they are reformed. There you go.
Brilliant. No, I mean, that's a good answer. That's a good answer. I guess we've got some questions, haven't we now, Josh, for really looking at, you know, reflecting back and on your ministry and on your life as well. And I guess one part is, you know, obviously you both stayed at the Granary after you retired, Paul. Why did you both decide to stay in the Granary and in Raynham in the area for? Because you could have moved away, you could have gone somewhere else, you could have. But why did you want to stay? Is there a reason why?
That thought occurred to me, actually, but I felt that the Granary was my home, as it were, and you don't leave home easily. And I love the people, you know, so we stayed. I think probably the answer is very simple.
And I suppose you wanted to encourage Pastor Danny as well.
Yes, I did. I did want to encourage Pastor Danny. I hope he was encouraged.
I'll have to ask him.
Yeah. Sometimes departing ministers can be the greatest discouragement to the oncoming minister. But no, that wouldn't be what I want at all. Yeah.
I also, I guess, Josh, want to look at, I guess, the church in general over the last over your lifetime as well, and just to kind of in England and in America, because they are two different entities in a way. They're the two different ways how they work. How how the church changed negatively, but also positively as well? Maybe we could bring out one positive, one negative that which the church has changed, which maybe we need to think about. Be thankfully for the Lord, but also pray for maybe for change to happen as well.
Yeah. Well, I've often said that if the American church and the English church could meet mid-Atlantic, that would be ideal. Because they have their strengths and their weaknesses, and we have our strengths and our weaknesses. And
you felt you could learn from them.
Yes. I don't know really what kind of attitude I had in going to America initially. I don't think, and I hope it wasn't that I had something to teach them, but that the Lord wanted me to go. I'm sure the Lord wanted me to go. But I found that America's great asset was a great warmth in their churches. A warmth that isn't true in every church, but of course in the best churches, you'd find a real warmth there and really lovely people. And I liked ministering there. I found a freedom to preach. Freedom to preach is always a significant factor. It meant the Holy Spirit was not quenched. And my problem here in the past has been that I felt there's been a quenching of the Spirit, such cold evangelicalism. That's a contradiction in terms, cold evangelicalism. We should be piping hot, and we've got wonderful truth, and we should love that truth, and we should be boiling hot. Our worship on the Lord's Day should be heartfelt worship. And I've always wanted that, and I think we've had it to the best of our ability, the Lord helping us from Sunday to Sunday. Always been encouraged by Christians that are warm-hearted, and we have some warm-hearted people. We still have them at the Granary. Yeah.
No, that's important to think about. To kind of learning from each other. That's a really important point from England and America, and you can even worldwide, couldn't you? Learn from churches in other continents. 100%. Is anything else you want to add on that matter before we get next?
Well, I knew that their knowledge wasn't as deep as ours. I don't wish to be thought arrogant in saying that, but they are basically a man-based gospel. They're very zealous in, you see, I'm making a generalization really, and generalizations are always dangerous, but they put the emphasis on man, whereas the emphasis should be on Christ. And always to be Christ-centered is the thing. And I hoped that over the years I was going, I would see a change in emphasis in America. And I think in certain churches there have been a change. And there have been those that have confessed it. There's been a change. And the fact that they've invited me back and back and back, I got to the point where I hadn't got a Sunday free. I hadn't had a Sunday free for years, actually, when going to America. That's a good sense. It isn't something to boast of. It's just what the Lord has done, and that they love the preaching. And it's wonderful to preach to people who love to hear you. And that's a very important thing. Yeah.
So as now you've both retired. You've retired from active ministry. Is there is there any sort of advice, Paul, you would have for young men who are perhaps considering Christian ministry, and maybe we'll ask that to you as well, Elaine, for young women who not necessarily considering Christian ministry, but considering some form of service, perhaps as a pastor's wife, perhaps as a young couple who are considering ministry and where the Lord might take them. Is there kind of any advice you would have for people in such situations?
Well, I think it was the doctor, and I would quote him: "Stay out of it."
You're called, is it?
That's it, yes. You're called "stay out of it." And if the Lord wants you in it, you can't. It's as simple as that, you know. Obviously, there is a truth behind that, because the minister will suffer all kinds of opposition and all kinds of challenges to his ministry. But if he is really called, he'll stick it and stay faithful to his people and his call to the church. And that would be my advice. Yes, absolutely.
So John Marshall used to say, when he was asked, "Have you ever thought of resigning?" And he said, "Yes, every day."
Every week, every day, yes.
But, you stick at it.
Yes.
Well, there's nothing like it, is there? Compared with the gospel, it's so fantastic. It's everything we desire. Our souls are restless till we find our rest in him. And then when we've got that, there's nothing else like it.
Yes.
And, you go through things then knowing that the Lord knows, and, realizing that the Lord is watching you and being with you in all circumstances. And it comes back to what we say in different ways: trust in the Lord and lean not to your own understanding. Just trust in the Lord.
Yes.
And he sees you through.
Yeah.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
I guess
So we have
well,
one
go
more
on,
question.
Go on, Josh.
Yeah. Well, I don't know
Yeah.
who wants to be the one to ask it.
I'll let Josh ask it.
The last question. So you're now in retirement. And you're thinking about what's next for you, and obviously as believers, our hope is a great one. It's in the new heavens and the new earth, the glory which is to come.
Yeah.
So our question is quite simple. It's glory. What excites you most? What excites you most about glory?
To see him.
There we go. Said it all.
Yes. And a new heaven and new earth, full of righteousness, away from sin and death and the devil, and parting heaven. To be with him. Yeah.
The more you see of this world,
the
more you wish you were out of it, and in the glory.
Yeah. Oh, it's fantastic.
I remember the doctor's almost final words, really, before he died, when he was on his deathbed. People were praying around him, because I can understand this. They were losing a great preacher, and they felt it. And they were praying for him. And he said, "Don't pray for my healing. Don't hold me back from the glory." I've never forgotten those words. Those are great words. We are heading to the glory. And I wish there were more of an emphasis, that it shouldn't be absent from our preaching. And I guess I don't hear preaching very much, apart from our pastors, of course. But to hear more of the preaching of heaven, and of seeing Christ in all his splendor, to know more of Christ in all his splendor in the glory forever, because that's where we're heading.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you won't think of politicians then.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, I think that is a perfect point at which to end on. So thank you very much, Paul and Elaine.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being.
No, thank you for being patient with us.
Yes,
Oh,
All up.
indeed.
yeah, thank you for taking your time with all
Not
those
at all.
questions.
Not at
Yeah.
all. Yes, but you can edit it.
You'll need to, I think.